No one, least of all Will Wright, the co-founder of Maxis, could have predicted just how massive The Sims would become. With over 41 million copies sold, multiple Game of the Year awards, and even a spot at number 31 on Time Magazine's list of the greatest video games of all time, it was inevitable the franchise would expand beyond PC. But one of the strangest places The Sims ever went wasn't a console, it was the Game Boy Advance. Maxis created the console versions, but handheld development was a different beast, and they didn't have the time, tools, or experience to build for it. So EA handed the series to Kryptonite Games, a studio already known for their handheld adaptations of Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. When The Sims Busting Out launched on the Game Boy Advance, it kicked off a run of handheld Sims games that quietly became some of the most ambitious, strange, and story-driven entries the franchise has ever seen. So today, we're diving into The Sims Busting Out and the Urbz Sims in the City, breaking down the worlds, characters, and storylines that defined a generation of Sims players. If you end up enjoying this video, hit like and subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss the next one. Now, let's start at the beginning with The Sims Busting Out. After creating your sim, you're dropped off in Sim Valley, a quiet little town your mother sent you to spend the summer with your Uncle Hayseed. And if you played Busting Out on console and you're wondering why none of this sounds familiar, that's because it isn't. Kryptonite didn't port the console game. They built a brand new one with its own world, its own cast, and its own weird little rhythm. Uncle Hayseed eases you in by teaching you the basics. Keep your needs in check, pick the right conversation topics, and try not to embarrass yourself. Because relationships in this game aren't about spamming tell a joke, they're about saying what each sim actually wants to hear. For a brief moment, you even get to enjoy the comforts of your uncle's house before he reveals that you're staying in the barn. He tosses you a few spare pieces of furniture and some appliances that look like they've seen unspeakable things, and suddenly that barn becomes your first real home. Uncle Hayseed offers you your first job mowing the lawn, and if you do well, you get promoted. If you get promoted, the same job pays better the next time. Once you've got your footing, Sim Valley starts opening up fast. Your uncle asks for help rounding up his chickens, which would be normal, except they've been scattered across town. As you search for them, you meet the town's residents, and this is where Busting Out gets ambitious. Every townie's got a personality, a backstory, and a schedule. They're not standing around waiting for you, which sounds great until you realize the sim you need is asleep or hanging out somewhere you can't reach yet. Eventually, Uncle Hayseed sends you to Detective Dan DeMann, the police officer of Sim Valley. Dan tells you the chickens were chased off by the Velocirooster, a lab accident turned nightmare that he spent most of his career hunting. His sister was killed by the Velocirooster, and he's been raising her daughter, Nora Zelot, ever since. Nora's an aspiring politician, and much like real politicians, she's thrilled to agree with whatever you say if it earns your support. Once you've gotten in good with them, Dan asks you to investigate a local auction at the general store, convinced something shady's happening. Your investigation turns up nothing, but I gotta say, the music in this game is amazing. The general store theme is basically a remix of the Sims theme, and it's a banger. Anyway, you report back, and your uncle immediately ropes you into a delivery to the market, except the road's blocked by a biker gang. Their leader, Dusty Hogg, is furious. His bike's broken down, he's lost his helmet, and the gang's been camped out at the Burning Spoke pub ever since. You calm him down, fix the bike, track down the helmet, and the gang finally clears out, opening up the rest of town. Now that you and Dusty are besties, he offers you his old scooter if you do a few favors, like tending bars so his crew can drink for free, repainting his motorcycle, and delivering aluminum cans to an extremely not suspicious laboratory. The scooter's fast, customizable, and it restores your fun while you ride it. But it's also so fast that it turns navigation into a disaster, because Sim Valley's layout is genuinely confusing. The world map gives you a general sense of where things are, but actually getting around is so obtuse that even after beating the game, I still hadn't memorized where everything was. When you finally make it back home, Uncle Hayseed tells you that it's time to move out. Apparently, you're too talented for farm life, and it's time to make it out on your own. But not before paying rent, of course. I'm not sure that's what our mother had in mind, Unc, but alright. He sends you to Giuseppe Mezzoalto, a local vagrant who somehow has just the place for you and happily moves all your belongings himself. I can't prove Giuseppe's related to the Alto family from The Sims 3, but between the criminal energy and the very obvious Italian mob vibe straight out of The Sopranos, it feels pretty clear he was at least the inspiration. And just like that, you've got a new home, the rafters of the old clock tower. From here, the game stops feeling like a tutorial and you're finally free to roam, pick up jobs, build relationships, and slowly unlock more of Sim Valley, which is great until the Velocirooster shows up. Because yes, it roams the town too, and if you get too close, it'll wreck you and send you straight to the hospital. As you bounce around town, you meet Old Salty, owner of the fish and chip shop, who insists he's a legendary sea captain. He'll buy whatever you catch, but only if you can prove yourself to Ophil McLean, the best fisherman in Sim Valley. Ophil's grumpy that the fish aren't biting, and he only agrees to teach you if you buy a fishing pole and read his cousin's book. Do that, and suddenly fishing becomes another little money loop, and Salty keeps his promise. Elsewhere, Vernon peeves a stressed-out desk worker who's had it with being mocked by Eddie Renelin, the local gym bro. Vernon wants to join the gym but can't afford the 200 simoleon membership. You can, and once you do, you realize Eddie's not actually that bad. He's vain, sure, but he's weirdly friendly once you get past the attitude. Before long, you're in a weightlifting competition called the Raging Chicken, which is exactly as dumb as it sounds. Meanwhile, Hester Prim, the town librarian, is dealing with a full-on bookworm infestation. The library's closed, nobody can return books, and she's at her limit. You clear out the critters, track down overdue books across town, and the library reopens, letting you build skills whenever you want. Then there's Club Rudd. It used to be the town's party spot, but it's been shut down over unpaid back taxes. Bucky Brock, a mechanical bull rider and former DJ, wants it back. The original owner, Maximilian Moore, is now the head surgeon at the hospital, and he'll hand over the club if the taxes get paid. Detective Dan's the one who shut the club down, but he'll let it reopen if you pay up and make the place look legitimate again. And once you think you've got a handle on the town, Giuseppe offers a shortcut by way of steam tunnels under Sim Valley. All you need is a crowbar from Uncle Hayseed and the city blueprints hidden beneath the clock tower. Handing Giuseppe access to the entire town feels like a bad idea, but you do it anyway. Eventually, the grind pays off. Nikki Knack, owner of Nikki Knack's Bric-a-Brac Trinket Shop, admits she can't rent out her waterfront villa. You suggest renting it, and she's more than happy as long as you can provide 4 character witnesses, proof of employment, and 3,000 simoleons. After meeting her requirements, Giuseppe moves you again, and you're now the proud owner of the waterfront villa. Once you're living on the waterfront, Sim Valley's wealthier Sims come to you for help. Claire Cutterbell, the town's self-appointed poet laureate, swears she's had a run-in with a ghost haunting an abandoned shack east of town, and wants you to find out what it wants. The only way to reach the shack is through the steam tunnels, and while you're down there, you find an urn that absolutely shouldn't be sitting in a sewer. When you break into the shack, you meet Ephraim Earl, a Civil War soldier who claims he's been dead for almost 200 years, and offers you everything he owns if you can solve his riddles. Succeed, and he gives you the keys to his cellar, which is full of items that should not be left unattended, including a real-life mummy, a seance table, and a mutant plant that looks very capable of eating you if you get careless. Dashell Swank, the art history professor, is trying to create an art scene in town. He's been desperate to open a museum for years, and he offers to buy a masterpiece landscape portrait if you can create something worthy of a proper exhibit. And while there's no art scene, the music scene is popping off. Local punk Mel Odious wants into a new band led by Vera Vex, who only cares about reputation and talent. Conveniently, Giuseppe just happens to have a guitar for sale. Uncle Hayseed even lets the band rehearse in his barn. Although somehow the jam sessions still end up happening at Club Rudd, but whatever. Then there's Lottie Cash, an heiress with more money than sense who can't decide whether she wants to buy the Pizza Pandemonium TV show or just purchase the studio where it's filmed. The show is hosted by celebrity chef Chet R. Chase, also known as Papa Chase, who's currently running the Dockside Diner while he's in town. Befriend him, improve your cooking, and pay the entry fee, and you'll be able to compete in Pizza Pandemonium under Lottie's ownership. And finally, you catch the eye of Daddy Big Bucks. Aside from what I call myself, he's the richest man in Sim Valley, and he wants to host the Sim Valley Triathlon. Even with all his money, he can't buy a venue or the mayor's approval, so he asks you to prove the events are worth it. That means wrangling the Velocirooster, breaking the bull riding record at the Country Cafe, and knocking out Mad Willie Hertzia. It's brutal, it's ridiculous, and it forces you to build your body skill like your life depends on it. But once you pull it off, the mayor signs off, and Daddy Big Bucks offers you his summer mansion. After you provide 8 character witnesses, a 10,000 simoleon down payment, and 3 more promotions, Giuseppe moves you in one last time to the Imperial Estates. By this point, Sim Valley's basically yours. Detective Dan, having cleaned up most of the town's chaos, gets reassigned to a public works project to construct an aluminum statue meant to honor the city. Dashell knows a sculptor in SimCity and convinces him to take the job. And thanks to your reputation, the sculptor makes a statue in your likeness instead. Detective Dan's understandably annoyed, but the statue's too good to take down, so he lets it stand and agrees no one has to know its origin. Not every mystery is that flattering, though. Dwayne Doldrum, the most boring man in Sim Valley, becomes obsessed with the disappearance of the Looney Lemmings, thrill seekers who used to dive off a seaside cliff and haven't been seen in months. The cliff's been shut down by lifeguard Misty Waters, who refuses to let anyone near it. Now listen, I know this is a kid's game and you're not supposed to objectify anyone, but good lord, Misty Waters, what are you eating? Misty won't reopen the cliffs officially, but after enough pestering, she gives up and lets you risk your life out there anyway. On the other side of town, Nora Zealot decides to run for Assistant Associate Treasurer and casually mentions that Phil McLean is planning to run for mayor. There's a loophole in the Constitution that allows anyone to force a new election, and both you and Nora agree Phil would be terrible and conspire to put you on the ballot instead. For 10,000 simoleons, most of which goes to her management fee, she runs your campaign and tells you to harass Phil until he drops out. And somehow, it works. But while you're climbing the ladder, Vera Vex reveals Giuseppe stole her guitar and the police won't take her seriously. You talk to Detective Dan and agree to catch Giuseppe in the act. One night, while visiting Uncle Hayseed, you stumble into Giuseppe mid-crime and your uncle tied up next to a guillotine, which is not ideal. You snap a photo, Detective Dan shows up, and Giuseppe finally goes to jail. Around the same time, Maximilian Moore resurfaces again, now a member of Virtue Chem Labs. After donating 10,000 simoleons and inventing a cure for happiness, he tells you that if you want in, you'll need to get a grant from Daddy Big Bucks and a significant scientific discovery. Daddy Big Bucks agrees and points you towards an old mystery. Years ago, a meteor crashed in the northern part of town, and when officials arrived, it was gone. By chance, you investigate Uncle Hayseed's barn where you find a hidden cellar that is housing a rocket ship. So naturally, you pocket it, yes, pocket, and Virtue Chem welcomes you in. Uncle Hayseed denies knowing anything about the rocket, so you decide to fix it up yourself. By the end of the summer, you've earned the town's trust, climbed every ladder imaginable, and become Sim Valley's most powerful resident. That's when Uncle Hayseed finally tells you the truth. You're an alien. The meteor wasn't a meteor, it was your rocket. Your mother found you as a baby and raised you as her own, and Uncle Hayseed hid the evidence all these years. But now it's time to be who you were always meant to be. The entire town gathers to see you off. Oh, looks like Giuseppe's escaped. Your rocket launches into the sky, and it finally feels like your story's complete, until the ship immediately crashes back down to Earth. And just like that, The Sims Busting Out comes to a close. This game was absolutely incredible. Sure, the map was obtuse, managing your needs while juggling time-based objectives could be frustrating, and more than once it felt the game was actively testing your patience. But the amount of love and care poured into it is undeniable. So imagine my surprise when I found out that the Game Boy Advance version of the Urbz Sims in the City had absolutely nothing to do with the PC game's focus on street life or punk culture and was instead a direct sequel to Busting Out. Before we jump into Urbz though, quick reminder that these videos are made possible by my supporters over at mynameisgonz.com. Tiers start at $1 and every bit helps. You'll get your name at the end of videos, behind-the-scenes content, early access, and if you want, the chance to put your sim self into one of my complete history projects. So please consider supporting me at mynameisgonz.com. Okay, back to the Urbz Sims in the City. The Game Boy Advance version of the Urbz takes place in Minneapolis, a New Orleans-inspired city where 4 rival groups are constantly vying for influence. As you create your sim, the game asks a few questions to decide whether you'll be a streety, nerdy, richy, or artsy. Gameplay-wise, it's the same foundation as Busting Out, but the city's built better, navigation's clear, schedules feel more consistent, and the phone even lets you invite Sims to your house. Story-wise though, it immediately goes darker. You start as a janitor at King Tower, owned by businessman Harlan King. Oh look, I guess this is where your rocket ship crashed at the end of Busting Out. Your boss Chris Thistle fires you on orders from the tower's new owner, Daddy Big Bucks. Big Bucks came down from Sim Valley weeks earlier, bought the building from Mr. King, evicted everyone, and Mr. King vanished without a trace. Chris lets you stay anyway, as long as you help keep the place running. While fixing a TV, you find a hidden message from Harlan King. Daddy Big Bucks promised him riches beyond imagination for the tower and plans to buy out all of Minneapolis. That doesn't sit right with you, and when Chris accidentally locks herself inside the building, you take it as your excuse to break into Big Bucks' office, only to get caught by Big Bucks himself and his lawyer, Lily Gates. That's where Big Bucks lays out his plan. He's turning Minneapolis into an urban theme park, forcing out residents and converting the city into a tourist attraction. What's unsettling is he doesn't recognize you at all. The cheerful billionaire from Sim Valley is gone, and replaced instead by a cold and ruthless billionaire. He turns you over to Detective Dan DeMann, who was transferred from Sim Valley after Minneapolis' previous detective was convicted of burglary, and somehow, Dan doesn't recognize you either. Still, other returning Sims hint they remember you, and Easter eggs confirm your connection to Uncle Hayseed, so it's pretty clear you're playing as the same character. After you earn Dan's trust, he releases you on parole and allows you to roam Urbania and meet its colorful cast of townies. Maximilian Moore is now running the medical center at Minneapolis University and offers you a scholarship if you help with his research and write a thesis. He's a full-blown hypochondriac now and doesn't reference his life in Sim Valley at all. Phoebe Twiddle, once a cashier at Nicky Knack's shop, has opened a thrift store of her own and asks you to help Cannonball Coleman, the sweetest horn player this side of the Milky Way who's struggling to write lyrics. Help him through it and he rewards you with a stand-up gig at the pizza place. Dusty Hogs moved here too, now running a bike shop with Ewan Watami. He's organizing a dirt bike competition, and once you convince Ewan you've got what it takes, Dusty lets you race. Then there's Berkeley Claude, local con man, who hands you 200 simoleons to buy shrunken heads at the thrift auction. It costs way more than promised, and as compensation, Berkeley gives you a hoverboard. It's somehow worse than the scooter from Busting Out. It's too fast, too slippery, and you have to mash A the whole time. Lottie Cash has burned through her inheritance and now lives here with her mom and stepfather. She tells you about Club Sizzle, a members-only hangout, and says you'll need to impress Crystal, the owner's daughter, to get in. Crystal eventually lets you through and introduces you to Zizzles, special skills that make life easier. The club itself is not special, but Zizzles certainly are. By now, your name's spreading. Grandma Hattie, local activist, recruits you to protest Daddy Big Bucks and his plan to gut the city. And that march pushes you straight into the Sims Quarter. This is where the Urbz starts feeling like a much smoother sequel, and once you finally get a motorcycle, movement stops being a punishment. Detective Dan pulls you into a stakeout at Old Salty's riverboat, convinced there's a plot brewing. After a quick card game, Giuseppe Mezzoalto mistakes you for an accomplice and sends you to recover a secret briefcase. You bring it to Dan, who wiretaps it before you return it to Giuseppe, turning the whole thing into a quiet surveillance operation. Meanwhile, Lily Gates appears in the Sims Quarter looking to buy the old bumper boat parks for big bucks. She admits she doesn't want to see it sold and tells you if the park reopens, it'll be out of Big Buck's hands. You recruit Ewan and Dusty to repair the place, and Polynomial, leader of the Nerdies, agrees to bring the crew in to boost attendance. The park opens and Big Bucks gets blocked again. Grandma Hattie is brewing up a bigger plan to stop Big Bucks. She asks that you keep an eye out while she meets with the Resistance during a midnight meeting at the graveyard. Cannonball asks you to work security at Zeke Zideco's club, and Luther L. Big Bucks, Daddy Big Bucks' son and leader of the Richies, asks you to reopen the Epoch Museum so the wealthy can gather in peace and quiet. Roxanne Moxie, a famous carny, knows the perfect curator in SimCity and offers to bring them in if you cover travel expenses. Then, Mambo Loa, mystic sage and self-proclaimed prophet, drops a vision. Daddy Big Bucks is about to purchase Old Salty's riverboat, the most iconic landmark in the Sim Quarter. The riverboat's been in Salty's family for over 90 years. It belonged to his brother Pepper Pete, who vanished on a shark wrestling trip over a year ago. That disappearance is why Salty moved from Sim Valley to take over the family business. Mambo Loa's plan is simple. Dress up as Pepper Pete to convince Salty not to sell. You gather costume pieces across town, confront Old Salty, and surprisingly, the plan works. Daddy Big Bucks snaps and, in his rage, commits a murder. Okay, I'm kidding. You don't actually die. You wash up in the bayou where brothers Crawdad Clem and Bayou Boo immediately assume you're a vampire. After you prove you're not, they dare you to cross the swamp and meet the creature living in the dark tree. That's where you meet Lloyd, a kind anthropomorphic alligator who tells you Daddy Big Bucks has been snooping around the swamp looking for nuclear fuel rods. Lloyd gives you half an old locket that once belonged to the brothers' mother in hopes that they will trust you. That's unfortunately not enough, so Bayou Boo sends you to face the crazy Red Man in a fiddle contest. After you prove that you're the best there's ever been, the Red Man hands over the other half of the locket. With the trinket restored, the brothers agree to help you return to the city. Bayou Boo guides you into an old mausoleum where he gets sucked into a hidden corridor in the process. You press on alone and make it back to Minneapolis, where Grandma Hattie tells you the city erupted while you were gone. The riots forced Big Bucks to reopen the city center, which he now owns outright. However, you don't get far before Detective Dan reluctantly arrests you. Under pressure from Big Bucks, the city council outlawed running, claiming it causes noise pollution. Grandma Hattie writes a letter to the governor of Paradise Island demanding the law be repealed, and you enlist Gordy Puck, a university student, to deliver it. The law gets overturned, and Roxanne Moxie announces the carnival's reopening. She needs an animal act, a tightrope walker, and money. Misty Waters has moved to Minneapolis and opened a gym in King Tower, and she also happens to be a professional tightrope walker. She'll join, but only if you find her a date to Daddy Big Buck's film premiere. You ask Luther, and he says yes. Of course, I mean, who wouldn't? You also find Roxanne a cute nutria, earning full access to the carnival attractions. Then you meet Teresa Bullhorn, manager of the Cinema de Urbania, now under Big Buck's control. She's miserable because she can't show the film she wants, and after talking with you, decides the answer is a play openly criticizing Daddy Big Bucks. You help find actors, decorate the stage, and put on a show so insulting that Big Bucks decides he's done playing fair. After the play, your rep leader nominates you for a reality TV show filming on Paradise Island, and you're dragged into a parade of humiliating contests hosted by actor and TV personality Pritchard Locksley. When it's over, Luther pulls you aside and reveals he hasn't seen his father in days, and rumor suggests Big Bucks was last seen hanging around the nerdies. Polynomial admits that Big Bucks contracted her to oversee a high-tech astrophysics lab hidden under his office. You sneak in, steal the documents, and bring them to Luther, who vows to shut it down. Back in the bayou, Clem tells you he still hasn't seen Boo since the mausoleum. You go looking and find Boo's been turned into a vampire. Mambo Loa says the only cure is chocolate bunnies, so you make them, feed Boo, and cure him. That's when you're ambushed by Heidi Shadows, a ninja, and locked inside Big Buck's secret lab alongside Harlan King. Harlan reveals Big Bucks has been building a time machine. Big Bucks plans to go back to the city's founding and buy every plot of land before Minneapolis ever exists, making himself ruler forever. Big Bucks arrives, activates the machine, and the ensuing chaos frees you. You promise to stop Big Bucks, but then Crystal asks you to the premiere, and your brain immediately forgets what consequences are. You dress up, grab tickets, and almost forget the stakes until Harlan King ambushes you beneath the new Big Buck statue for not focusing on the literal end of the city. At that point, you've got one option left: build your own time machine. You recruit Supernova, a physics major, and Ewan to handle the mechanical work. Giuseppe finally comes clean too. He's been working with Detective Dan the entire time, and he knows where Big Bucks went. You take your machine to the top of King Tower and jump through time to December 31st, 1870. And yes, there's hilarious detours, including the option to travel back to Sim Valley and watch yourself fixing Uncle Hayseed's tractor in Busting Out. But you eventually land in the right place. You find Ephraim Earl, very much alive, who says he watched Big Bucks plant flags across the land to claim it. Ephraim agrees to tear them down and hide them, erasing Big Buck's ownership before it can ever exist. Back in the present, Big Buck's plans collapse. He's arrested, Minneapolis erupts in celebration, and the city parades you through Glasstown as the crowd cheers. Big Buck's statue is removed and replaced with one of you. And in the end, Daddy Big Bucks is driven out into the bayou, chased by Lloyd the alligator, who, it turns out, just wanted to make a new friend. This was such a fun game. It doesn't have the same nostalgia or soundtrack magic as Busting Out, but it's still a really solid experience, especially as a sequel. Seeing these characters return in a new city and watching what their lives turned into after Sim Valley is genuinely satisfying. Plus, the Urbz also released on Nintendo DS a few months later, and while it's mostly the same game, it does include one extra mission. You can start a special mission almost immediately, and it's centered around Splicer Isle, a long-abandoned island once used for animal DNA splicing and genetic experimentation. You find the island plans in the trash, and a local homeless man named Moki claims he knows where it is. He sends you to the Sim Quarter docks to speak with Sharona Faster, who used to run a water taxi service. For a small fee, she lets you borrow her boat. When you arrive, you meet Futomaki, a retired sumo wrestler turned sushi chef who's apparently the island's construction manager now. He says Daddy Big Bucks had been trying to rebuild the island but vanished before finishing the job. You hand over the plans, money, and a few cute helpers, and Futo gets to work. Days later, he calls to tell you Splicer Isle is ready, but it needs staff. You recruit Jack Ideal, Busta Cruz, and Moki himself. Moki reveals he's actually Dr. Mauricio Keys, a renowned genetic slicer. With the island reopened, Dr. Keys sets up a lab and asks you to collect amber so he can extract DNA and create new creatures. On the Game Boy Advance versions, you can buy normal pets like cats and dogs. On the DS though, that's replaced with splicing. Cynthia Braintrust, Dr. Keys' assistant, teaches you the splicing minigame, and you can end up with either a dinosaur, dodo, gorilla, unicorn, jackalope, dragon, or the Velocirooster. After you get your first pet, Busta pitches you a science experiment meets pet show to boost attendance, and you recruit Maximilian Moore, Cynthia Braintrust, and old man Gary Geezer to participate in it. And after you finish the main story, the DS hits you with the bonus finale. The splicing lab is under attack. You return to find Berkeley Claude messing with the equipment, and he accidentally clones a miniature version of Daddy Big Bucks who names himself Winky Wee Bucks. I wish I was kidding. Winky is somehow even worse than Big Bucks. He traps you, escapes, and takes over the carnival, amassing an army of ravenous nutria hell-bent on taking over the city. Your pet comes to your rescue, making its way to Minneapolis, where Old Salty, who can speak to animals I guess, says the only person who can defeat Winky is Pepper Pete, who's passed away. Or at least that's what everybody assumes. A nearby parrot claims Pete isn't dead, just stranded, and with the right sail, he can return to Minneapolis. You secure the sail, race to the carnival, and arrive just as Pete returns. Together, you ambush Winky, capture him, and end the chaos. Pete escorts your pet back to Splicer Isle, frees you, and the game ends on a happy note. It's optional, it's ridiculous, and it's one of the most memorable side stories in the entire game. Overall, The Sims Busting Out and the Urbz Sims in the City on the Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS are some of the best games the franchise has ever produced. But I gotta admit something. I've been lying to you. Because this story doesn't end here. It's actually a trilogy. The Sims 2 on Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS is a direct sequel to the Urbz, continuing the same storyline and somehow goes even harder. This video is already way too long, so tell me in the comments if you want the final chapter, because I promise, the handheld Sims 2 is absolutely unhinged in the best way. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive, and if you want to support the channel and help me keep making videos like this, you can check out my Patreon at mynameisgonz.com. There you'll get behind the scenes content, early access, and the chance to put yourself in a complete history video. And to my existing patrons, thank you for everything you do. It means the world to me. If you want to catch me live, I'm streaming Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitch at twitch.tv/mynameisgonz. Alright, stay safe, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next one.